What's up guys, and welcome to the 26th tutorial in my PHP backend. So in the previous tutorial we had a little look at the PSR7 and we did two implementations of the HTTP request interface, or the request interface, and the response interface. And these were kind of a naive implementation where we basically threw exceptions wherever they were not implemented. So this was just to show you how it's going to be built, and actually it's quite work intensive to make your own implementations of these interfaces, because there is a lot to grasp of what you're doing. And of course, if you build on some kind of framework the way I do, you might want to make your own implementations of it in order to make design decisions along the way that you're not happy about the current implementations out there. So you make your own little tweaks specific for your framework, and that is totally fine. But it's quite work intensive. So and also I like to take a look into what stuff are actually made of before I just like threw in a library in there. So this is just to show you basically what it's all about, the PSR standard. So also I encourage you to open up the interfaces in the PSR standard and have a look at what they're saying in here in the comments. So for example, please notice that they're supposed to be immutable, and the only exceptions to this case about the immutability is the stream. And so the biggest controversy with the PSR7 standard is that it's not 100% immutable. It's just like 99%, because the only thing that's not mutable is the stream that they use for the body, for example. And I found this really awesome conference about the standard and where it comes from, and current implementations and so on, and how it's supposed to be working. So I'll put this in the description later so you can have a look at it. It really helped me understand all the parts and how it's like put together, basically, and what's important with it and what's not important with it. So I suggest you watch this in between this tutorial and the next one, or maybe you can pause the video and watch it. So one of the biggest implementations of this interface is guzzle. They made a library for this PSR7 standard. So they're dealing with all the heavy workload, for example, the streams, which is one of the trickier parts with the implementation. And you can see here is kind of a tutorial from Packagized. So it's this package right here. So, and you install it by this command. So I'm going to copy this for later. And the version might not be the exact same for you, of course, if you're watching this at a later stage. And you can have a look in here how it's supposed to be working. So first I'm just going to go in here, and I'm in my working directory for the project, and I'm going to require the package. So it's going to take a while with the installation, and it shouldn't take too long. I already downloaded it, so it was cached from previous downloads. So now in my, if I have a look in my vendor folder, I should have gotten the guzzle HTTP package in here. And if we open up this, we see that we have the PSR7 in here. And if we open up this package, you can also see that they have all these functions for dealing with the request and response. And the one we're interested in is the survey request and the response object. So these are the two that we're going to use in our implementation. If we open up these, you'll see that they're basically identical to my implementations, only that they have an actual implementation in here. And I'm going to copy this constructor in here, so I'll know what parameters it's expect when I'm going to instantiate it for later. And also I suggest you browse through it here to see how they deal with the different implementations, like for example file uploads, which is also a thing that they mention in the conference in the other YouTube video that I'll put in the description. And this is really good for browsing through for learning purposes, of course. You can see that it also implements a server request interface. And you can also see in here that they implement the response interface and the request interface. But I'm going to use a server response, a server request and the response object. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down for now. And I'm going to go into my index.php file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two and replace it with guzzle's implementation instead. So I'm going to comment these out for now. And I'm gonna put these in here for reference. And if you remember, these were the parameters that it expected. So the first thing that I need to do is create a request. It's gonna be from the guzzle HTTP and the PSR7 and the server request. And you can see I also get some help in here. Some of these are defaults, so I'm not gonna override the default. For example, the HTTP version, I'm gonna keep the default settings and so on. So the first thing that needs the method, I'm gonna copy paste this from the previous one that I had. And then it needs the URI, and I'm also gonna copy that. And then it needs the headers, which I'm gonna override because this defaults to an empty one. And the way you can get all the headers is by this method from PHP. So I'm just gonna put this in here, and this will basically copy paste all the arrays and all of the headers in there. And it's a little bit off in the indentation here. And the body defaults to null, which I have my body in here, so I'm gonna keep this. And then it's the HTTP version, I'm gonna keep it as it is, and some server params, I'm also gonna keep the defaults there. Right, so semicolon there, so the request should be done. Then we have the response. We haven't really used the response a lot, but we're gonna do that in later tutorials. So this is also coming from the same package and the response object. And in here you can see it's like the response status. We don't know this for now because the response state is gonna depend on, we're gonna send the HTTP response code 200 if everything is fine. And at this state, obviously we don't know if the execution is gonna be successful. So we're gonna keep all of the defaults in here. And also the same goes for the header and the body, which is not generated yet, and all of these stuff in here. So I'm going to keep the default empty one. And then I'm going to remove this. And I'm going to save it and try to run it. And you can see my server is running here down here as well. So let's see if we can get a request. All right, so it's working the exact same way as previously. And you might be wondering why this is. But the important thing is that we use the interfaces all the way down here. So we use the response interfaces from the PSR standard. This also means that we can at a later stage switch which actual implementations of these PSR interfaces we have. So let's say that in a couple of years we still have this application running, and the guzzle library might have been deprecated or something. Then we can easily just switch out which implementation of the interfaces we're using to another package. This is of course the power of abstraction. So I hope you guys liked this tutorial, and I hope to see you in the next one.